To order. Today is Thursday, February 28th, 2013. Time is 7 p.m. Our invocation today would be by Deacon Chuck Jones from Greater Bethel Missionary Baptist Church.
This evening, our Heavenly Father, once more again, this we come servants called in the holy and righteous name. We thank you, Heavenly Father, for giving us another opportunity to come together, Heavenly Father, and work out our differences. We ask and pray, Lord, that you would just bless this meeting, Heavenly Father. We ask that you would just give each and every one an understanding heart and mind so we can be able to work out our differences. And we ask that you would just continue to bless Floresville so that she can continue to grow and be the kind of place that you want your family to live in, and Father. We just thank you and we love you for all that you've done for us. In Christ Jesus' name we ask for these blessings. Amen.
We have established a quorum: Councilman Miller, Councilman Bones, Councilwoman Castillo, Councilman Guerrero, and Councilman Rodriguez. Will everyone please stand for the U.S. Pledge of Allegiance and take the flag? At this time, do we have any citizens' comments? Either one? You sure?
Come on, Word. I agree. This is not about the cemetery, but I graduated here at 48, and I've had a lot of business experience. My concern is the negative writing about the city of Floresville. You know, I can understand if we're broke. What I'd like to do, and I don't have the figures now, in the future, I would like to have, just see, if I'm at the next meeting, I'd like to see income October the 1st through February the 28th. I can get that. Then I'd like to see expenses for the same period. Then I'd like to ask one question. Are there any past due bills? Now, we can get all wrapped up and sound complicated. You know, if you say 2016 and talk about $1 million, that's a little scary. Well, I want to put a different viewpoint on the thing, strictly optimistic. I wrote an article. Oh, I thought it was great. Go down, walk to Walmart, go south, you know. But a couple of people said, you know, that's okay. But, and forget all about that writing articles, you just can't get around the fact of what the actual figures show. And so that's basically what I want to do in the future. Voice of optimism.
Mr. Russell, before you sit down, I'm going to have Ms. Pollack explain the procedure.
I'm sorry?
I'm going to have Ms. Pollack explain to you the procedures and how to get this information that you need so we can get it to you.
Sorry.
Sherry, will you
I'll know
explain?
better next time.
No. You're always welcome to speak.
Anybody can enter a public records request to the city of the office of the city manager, I'm sorry. In the request, it needs to be specific as to what you want. You'll give it to us, we'll process it. Generally, it's 10 days unless the information is not readily available or it takes a little bit more time to get together for you. However, we will get back with you to let you know that. There generally is a cost associated with it. It may be a per page cost. If we have to make copies for you, we have to reimburse some of that cost that we've got. Or there's an option to do it electronically with, again, to buy the CDs and that kind of thing. However, if you put it in writing and bring it into the city manager's office, Mr. Russell, we can start processing that.
It's tough to find out. I call and I email, but I think I can finally have it. I'm a slow learner.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jones?
Madam Mayor, City Council, and the Floresville residents. The reason I'm here tonight is that this council gave me the privilege to serve on your Park and Recreation Foundation. This foundation was certified by the Texas Attorney General, and pardon me for talking to these folks because you guys already know what I'm going to say. I want to talk to these folks. Back in June of 2010, the foundation was certified by the Attorney General. The organizer for Floresville was none other than Mr. Andy Gosselin, your city mayor. And to read from the manager, I'm sorry I promoted it. I'm not going to pay you though. That's one of the reasons I'm here, money. To read from that certification document, the foundation was organized to advance and support the activities to increase the funding for the maintenance and improvement of all city parks, to increase the knowledge and understanding of the recreational activities in the parks, and to lessen the burden of the government by conducting the activities that support the betterment and public enjoyment of all your city parks. Somehow, since its inception, that foundation hibernated. My purpose tonight is to tell you that the 7 people that they appointed, George is one, and I saw Thomas when he came in, is another, as well as myself. We are ready to serve you. Hopefully tonight the City Council will appoint our 8th member. Our charter stated that we should have a representative from the City Park and Recreation Department. So once we get that individual tonight, we will have 8. But we're only 8. What I'm going to ask y'all to do is to donate your time, your blood, your sweat, your tears, and your money. I've been trying to do some networking with the San Antonio River Authority. I went to a meeting the other night. There's potential grant money across there. I'm going to put out some sign-up sheets for points of contact. We need to know who, where, when we can get volunteers to do anything that we need to do within the park. If you work for a civic organization that's ready to volunteer, once we get rolling, we've only had 2 meetings. We're prioritizing things that need to be fixed, like the women's restrooms at the city park, the fence, the sinkholes. We've been working with the San Antonio River Authority. But as you well know, without a dollar, there's not a lot of things that can be done without volunteerism. So I'm going to get on my hands and knees and say, please, sign up. We got the Catholic girls that the city recognized a couple of meetings ago. They're all ready to do. All we need to know is when to start, where we can go with volunteerism and your money.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. I was in attendance on the meeting last night, and they are so excited and have plans that y'all are going to be really pleased with. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I just have a question for Mr. Jones. How is the foundation currently funded?
Right now, there is a bank account of a residual a little over $4,000. We don't know where the money actually came from in that account. But again, the monies in the future will actually come from the donations. It's my understanding that we can take pieces of, we give you an antique, whatever, there can be auctions, we can do bake sales, we can do whatever, but that money then will be put into that bank account. But there is another account that works with the water bill that the City Park and Recreation Department has utilization of that money.
And is that where the funding has come from so far?
No, that hasn't been used. And I don't know the sources of the $4,000 currently in the bank account, but that hasn't been anything tapped out of it in years. 2 years.
But there is a recurring fund that shows up coming from the water bill.
Yes, and that's in the city budget itself. But that's not for our use. That's for the Recreation Department's use with some oversight from the foundation.
Can you explain that? What do you mean? If it's, how does the foundation have oversight of city dollars? Or were these dollars that were dedicated to the Parks Foundation, but because they're in the city's fund, that ties the piece to it?
This is a citizen comment. It's not a deliberation or consideration and action item. So as a point of order, you can't have the council ask any questions.
Do we have any other citizens' comments? Yes, ma'am.
Joanne.
Joanne.
This past Monday, some of us here took our time and attended a special meeting that you had. And it was for the express purpose of presenting to everyone, as well as Mr. Miller, complaints that were supposedly well-founded. What I'd like to ask is when the process, and I don't know if you'll answer this, when Mr. Jocelyn came to you with those complaints, were they verified? Were they made sure that they were accurate as to the sources and what the complaints were?
Chris,
And
would
the
you like to
council,
respond to that?
right, it's as a citizen comment, you can put that to the council, and staff will look into it, but the council can't deliberate and get back to you.
My comment will then be, because it is my understanding that some of the complainants were not accurate, nor did they file any complaint. If that is found to be true, I do hope that you will express an apology to the appropriate person and get that corrected so that we all understand it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Melissa? I'm sorry, Tracy.
Mayor, Council, I am Melissa Popham, and I serve as Vice President of the 4A Board. My name appears on the complaint that was submitted by Andy Joslin at the last council meeting. I not only support this action, but I would like to be able to submit my personal opinion at a meeting. I am asking you to put it on an agenda, as an agenda item, so that myself and some of the others, the board members, the employees, can express their feelings about some of the issues that we have. I would also like to clarify that the Wilson County News Report listed myself and others, David Strozier, Mr. Jason Talley, were part of a complaint. That is incorrect. That is not true. Our concerns were listed as part of Mr. Joslin's complaint. Although we may not agree on the matter at hand, all of us, correcting it can help us all to move forward in a positive manner and all be a part of the solution and no longer be a part of this problem. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Talley?
Yes. Well said, Melissa.
Thank you, Jason.
Yes. Okay. Anyway, I'm Jason Talley, a local business owner, current FEDC treasurer. And I also wanted to just appear before you tonight to clarify a few statements that were made in the local paper and the letter read to you on February 25th. I wish to clarify statements made in a letter submitted by the city manager and read to the city council on February 25th, 2013. I first learned about these statements that evening when I walked into the FEDC meeting, and fellow FEDC board members heard my name mentioned in the city council meeting about a complaint with City Councilman Jim Miller. After reading the letter myself, I interpreted the letter as complaints coming from me about City Councilman Jim Miller. I'm not alone in this interpretation because people have stopped me on the street asking if I have a problem with Jim Miller. I have made no complaints about Jim Miller, and I was shocked by the mention of my name in a public statement read to the council.
If I didn't hear about it that night, I probably would have only heard about it in the newspaper. Because of the letter and statements posted in the Wilson County News, I wish to clarify to the public that the complaint was from the city manager, Andy Jocelyn, to the Floresville City Council in reference to Jim Miller. Also want the city council to know that if I have any complaints about any council member, that I will come to you in person and address those issues in person. And if I don't get those resolved, I'll come before this body and address it. Also want to highlight what Mr. Russell said, that I serve on a number of different boards. The FEDC, I have served on industry boards in San Antonio and still do, as well as insurance industry boards in Austin, a state association board. You are accountable for your actions. And you can make a positive atmosphere or make a negative atmosphere. You're not here to always agree with one another, but I will tell you that you can agree to disagree in a professional manner. And the way some of you have been conducting yourselves, in my opinion, is highly unprofessional. And so I would just encourage you all to learn to agree to disagree, because if we were all here to agree with each other, why are we here? So I just make that comment that you can conduct business in a professional manner without politicizing people. Thank you.
And I know you said we can't comment, but anybody after the meeting, the complaint is right here, give it to us, not by the Wilson County, but by the city. Anybody want to look after the meeting, you're welcome to see this complaint, and those names are on there.
Do we have any other citizen comments at this time? Okay. Then we're going to go on to number 1, old business, consideration and act to approve the minutes from workshop January 16, 2013. I believe you all have your minutes. If I can have a motion.
Before we have a motion, I have some comments about this.
Okay.
Item 1, it says Councilman Miller concerns, and I asked to see the documents related to the development, to which Mr. Plummer agreed to provide me. This was on January 16th. I need to make a note or make note to city staff that this has not been received. Secondly, in this meeting, we discussed the city manager submitting letters to the hospital district, Representative Kimball, Senator Zaffarini, to the Wilson County Commissioners, and to the Evergreen District, or Water District, I believe is what it is, to review and possibly renew their appointments to the board. That's not included in these minutes.
So can we amend those, or do we table them until we get it corrected? What's your opinion?
They can be amended and entered as amended.
We all amend those?
Yes, sir. I'll add the request of the letters. I'll go back in here to list them properly and then put that in.
Well, with those amendments, I'll motion to approve the minutes from the workshop January 16th, 2013.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Miller, second by Mr. Morones. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstain. Okay, motion carries 4-1. Consideration and action to approve minutes from January 29th, 2013.
Again, Madam Mayor, I have some comments on this. I found these minutes to be prepared unusually in that there were copies of speeches from individuals, that there were lists of dates and actions that were not substantiated in that meeting but presented as fact. Furthermore, the citizens' comments were selectively quoted, and when Councilwoman Castillo got up and spoke and accused me of being responsible for an excess of $750,000 of city debt. That's not reflected in these minutes. I'm very concerned about the accuracy of these meeting minutes and how they're being prepared. Because if we go forward to the next meeting minutes, just as an example, I submitted a copy of Ms. Uhas's comments to be included in the minutes because she read this speech, and that speech is not included in these minutes. So it appears just on first blush, and I'm not accusing anybody of it, that these minutes were prepared biasly. And as a result, I'm going to make a motion to deny these minutes and ask that they be re-prepared and be presented accurately.
Chris, can I make a comment on that? Am I allowed? First of all, I want to ask the councilman, when did y'all receive your minutes for y'all to review and make any changes before tonight? Friday.
Well, I got my minutes yesterday, okay? The minutes. Now, I got the agenda on Friday, but I got the minutes yesterday. And
Okay.
they called me Monday afternoon, I was in San Antonio, I thought I'd pick them up, on Wednesday. But
Okay.
the same thing, I still, go ahead, Madam Mayor.
You know, all I'm saying is that, you know, if we don't agree with something, we need to bring it up so it is corrected and presented correctly.
Well,
And, you know what I'm saying?
I have the same problem here, because here where it says, Mr., that I knew about the issues, what issues are we talking about? On the minutes, where it says, but what I'm saying is, at the same time, that guy too that was here from the Little League, you only quoted what he said good about Mr. Johnson, and I also kind of feel the same way, because that man that came in here saying that Mr. Johnson has done a good job with the Little League, yeah, maybe he's done a good job, but at the same time, I told that man there to put a plan, I told him at the workshop, put a plan together and bring it to it. That wasn't on there. That's making us seem like we're not here to fix these parts. And where it states that Mr. Morones, Jocelyn never approached him about the issues. What issues that we were talking about? That's all it says. We're never notified about the issues. What issues? It could be any issue. If you want to put, say, well, Morones agreed to do those minutes, and we're talking about what issue. That's all it says. They never approached him about the issues. What are we talking about? What issues are we talking about?
And that is something that does seem to be properly reflected.
Okay, and it goes on and on. It's just like Mr. Miller said about Ms. Castillo. Whatever Ms. Castillo said negative, and I think that's when it should have came to an order saying, Ms. Castillo, let's get it back on track, which it wasn't by the mayor to say, okay, let's have a little order here. Everything she said badly about Mr. Miller is not on in any kind of minutes.
Point of information, Mayor, what I read was factual, and I'll be more than happy to bring my notes next time. And I did not say that Mr. Miller was responsible for 700 and whatever.
You said 330,000.
Exactly, that's what I said. So Mr. Miller gave incorrect information.
But I still don't believe Mr. Miller was the cause of 330,000.
Okay, we're going to get back on topic here.
Well, I'm
We have a
on topic right here.
We have a motion to
No.
table it. I need a second.
I'm not through talking. I wasn't through talking yet. I'm here to serve the people, like I said over and over. When the people don't want me here, they throw me out. Okay? I'm just saying that these minutes are not done right, and we're gonna, I make a motion not to accept it tonight. Second.
Mr. Miller, have you made a motion?
I make a motion for not approved.
Okay, so will you second?
I second.
Thank you, and that way we can get these corrected, okay? So if y'all could, I'll have Sherry, if you could please review them very carefully.
There's a motion and a second on the floor.
Okay.
Point of order, Madam Mayor, there's a motion and a second on the floor.
Okay, can I have a chance, please? I have a motion by Mr. Miller, second by Mr. Morones. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Consideration and action to approve minutes from February the 14th, 2013.
Correct.
On citizen comments under the Open Meetings Act, there's not a requirement, as far as I know, the city's never included.
But that was my point regarding the last the previous minutes, in that they did include read comments from citizens' comment. So if we're going to do it in one, we need to be consistent about it, or not do it at all.
And I actually don't, do you have a copy of the minutes? Were the letters that were submitted included in the minutes?
No, they weren't letters, they were comments made during citizens' comments. Specifically, Mr. Jesse Evans, who read a speech that was given before by the city manager. He read that as citizens' comments, and they included that in the minutes.
It was also provided to the public at the front.
Yeah.
It wasn't just read.
It wasn't put in the council package.
But was it,
Yes, it was, sir.
It wasn't in mine.
was that, when it was done on there, was it, when it's in the minutes, was it written in the minutes, or was it included as an attachment?
As an attachment.
Okay. It does need to be something on there that, citizen comments just need to be recorded accurately into the minutes. Submission of exhibits and things like that won't be included in the minutes. That's the way it's always been done for everyone.
And then, while we're on this meeting of February 14th, under item 2C, actually 2C, text dot updates, it states Councilman Miller requests traffic study, when in fact I asked specifically for Mr. Engelhardt to provide us with the guidelines and standards and processes for exception to policy, because he was presenting the 2-year timeline to get a traffic light or to get a speed limit reduction, and I asked for the guidelines or essentially rules that establish that, and he agreed to provide them, but that statement is incorrect. I did not request a traffic study.
So it's the traffic study guidelines, Mr. Miller?
Well, it was questions, we were asking him the question about why it took 2 years to put in a stoplight.
Right.
That I'm sure there is a process, and that process has exceptions to it. And what are the guidelines to those exceptions? Obviously, the city of Floresville at this time is experiencing a great deal of growth, and waiting another year or 18 months for a stoplight at 181 and 97 West could be devastating to the traffic as well as the residents of our community. Hence, I asked the question for the guides.
Was there something we need to correct also, Mr. Miller, you said on item 1B? I didn't hear that.
No, that
okay.
That was okay. And then further into these meeting minutes, under item 3B, under the ticket writer, yes, the council did request a summary of what the city would be saving on this technology, but the major purpose or major focus of the motion to table was the technology fund balances, in that the financial reports that we had in hand at that time did not support the $7,000 being spent on that, and that's not reflected in the minutes.
Okay, so should it say requesting council approve the release of $7,000 for municipal court technology fund, fund balances unavailable and requested by council?
Well, and that the financial statements that were in hand, that had been provided, did not
reflect
that balance.
Correct.
And then lastly, on item 3C, I specifically asked questions about the property owners adjacent to the right-of-way, if they had been notified about this annexation. And I was advised that no, they had not been, and that we weren't legally required to do so. And that was not reflected in the minutes. But it did reflect that I voted against it. Oh, yeah, that was also.
And also, maybe we can show where I had to leave that before that agenda too. The agenda item, remember I left a little early. It was that that time.
Yes, sir, and I remember I had it in the 2016.
With those, that number of changes, I'm going to request to table those minutes until I can review the amended changes.
Okay.
So I'm going to make the motion to amend or table approving the minutes from the February 14th, 2013 meeting.
Okay, I have a motion to table. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, now we're going to go on to item 2, presentation. The first one is the water rate study. Andy and Mr. Gonzalez.
Cindy, can you help me with that? We'll allow Mr. Gonzalez some time to get prepared. He's going to hand out his document. Cindy.
Okay, my name is Raul Gonzalez. I work for a community resource group. It's a nonprofit, private corporation. Our home office is in Fayetteville, Arkansas. We serve 7 states, and in Texas, there's about 4 technical assistance providers, and I'm responsible. My area of jurisdiction is Brownsville to Del Rio and back toward Victoria. We provide free technical assistance to communities that are eligible for USDA funding. We have a contract to do this at no cost to the community. On this occasion, I'm using a different program because at the time we didn't have an application with USDA, and so I used the Office of Community Service grant contract that we have to provide you this service. In addition to that, this rate study is proprietary, belongs to me, it belongs to CRG, and you're free to use it for your financial planning. Beyond that, I'll go over the highlights of the rate study. The worksheets are in the back, the summaries and obviously is in the front, and I'll begin by reviewing some of the assumptions that I made in preparing this study. According to the billing information that I received, you averaged about 2,100 residential water customers, 387 commercial water customers, 1,903 residential sewer customers, and 245 commercial sewer customers. You have, one of the triggers for the rate study was that I was told that you were submitting an application to USDA for a $1.3 million loan for water improvements. You also are considering a $1.6 million loan application for wastewater treatment, and a third loan for additional wastewater treatment for $2.5 million. One of the other items that I gave consideration to was that in the 2013 budget, you did post depreciation on there, and that's something that I went ahead and included in the rate study as a capital repair and replacement reserve. The first things we look at after I collect the billing information is a financial information, and the latest information that you had was the 2011 audit. If you look at the audit, you know, we typically look at financial ratios as indicators as to whether you need to make a change in your rates or not. By looking at the 2000 audit, I did not see anything. Everything was positive with regard to your financial status based on the 2011 audit. But when you look at the 2013 budget, the budget projects a shortfall of about over 100,000. And that's one of the reasons that prompted the rate study as well. I'll also look at your affordability ratio and your current rates. There's a threshold of 1.5 to 2% that USDA and other lenders use to determine affordability in water and sewer rates. Your calculation for the current rates was 0.66. That's low. I mean, that's a good thing because it means you have low water and sewer rates, but that's also the lowest I've seen in ever. And usually the systems that I work with are 1.3, 1.25, 0.66 is half of that. So your water rates and your sewer rates are pretty low and they're pretty affordable at this time. Some of the significant findings that I found was that referring back to the financial audit, you really don't have in your cash and cash equivalents, you had very little money available for an operating reserve. Typically an operating reserve, the AWWA standard, American Water Works Association standard, is 1/8 of your expenses, and you had like $40,000 in the water and sewer account, and that is not a good thing. As I indicated before, the other significant finding was that the budget projects a shortfall of $113,000. I did include a capital repair and replacement reserve that you budgeted as a depreciation of $180,000. I compared that to my calculation on a capital repair and replacement reserve, and it's pretty close. So the depreciation and my estimation for the proper capital repair and replacement reserve is about the same. Obviously, a water and sewer rate increase is needed to meet the anticipated debt obligations, to operate and maintain its water and sewer system, and implement the capital repairs and replacement and improvements. I did rely on 12 months of billing information like I told you, and right now, the way your current water rates are structured is with an increasing block rate. What that means is like the first 3,000 gallons are in the minimum charge, which is, I think, $13.50. And then the next increment is the volume between 3 and 12,000, whereas the 9,000 is one level, $1.50, and then it jumps up to $2. Well, I tried to duplicate those rates on my rate study templates, and I couldn't do it. There is something wrong with the billing or the usage information. The most I could generate with the information that I gave me was revenues at about $850,000 or $860,000. You're projecting well over $1 million. So I could not use that information. I cannot duplicate. What I am proposing is your minimum charge and a flat block rate, a single volume block rate. Let's do this for 12 months. Let's track your billing program and see if you can give me more detailed information in 12 months, and then we can try and go back to your original increase in block rate that you had before. In my study, I also provide, and this is typical because the majority of my communities I'm working with are with USDA. I kind of provide information on guidance with the Russ loan covenants. It's kind of a reminder to those that when you sign that agreement with USDA, you're also obligating yourself to providing them quarterly, monthly reports, financial reports, annual audits, and things like that you need to be reminded of. And that's good information for you to kind of read at your convenience. Back to the rate presentation. Based on my calculations, I also attempted to phase in the water and the sewer rate structure. My first obligation was to address the shortfall in the 2013 budget, which is page 3, rate recommendations. Phase 1 water rates. Right now, as I indicated before, your current water rates are $13.50. The next 9,000 are $1.50, and all over 12,000 or $2. Just to cover your current obligations, not including future debt, you would need to increase the minimum charge to $16. And then your volume rate, instead of $1.50, would jump up to $2.80. Water rate option number 2 includes the proposed debt with USDA. And beware that we are basing these rates on cost estimates that were generated in 2008. So when your engineer begins the preliminary engineering report, this estimate is going to be, we're going to need to revise this estimate probably at closing of the loan with USDA, because at that time, the engineer will get the bids, we'll find out if there's a cost overrun, and we can make adjustments then. But it's important to view in advance what the impact would be with the 2008 cost estimate, because this USDA process doesn't happen very quickly. It might take a year or two to get to the bid stage. If you wait a year or two to the bid stage, to increase your rates for the proposed construction, it's going to be a major increase. So it's probably a good idea to start looking at it and increase your rates a little at a time and make that final adjustment when the bids come in. With the proposed water improvements, your minimum bill would jump up to $17.55. And the volume charge would remain at $2.80 as I proposed in the first one. So your first rate increase would be $16, and then the next one would be jump up to $17.55 for the minimum charge. The next thing I looked at was the sewer. Now keep in mind, on the water, you only have one capital improvement plan. On the sewer, there's 2 phases to it. So obviously, your sewer rates are going to get impacted a lot heavier than your water. Your current rate is $12.50 for a flat charge for residential. Just to break even with your budget, that increase would change to $16.50 from $12.50. When you start adding capital improvement plan, first for the wastewater treatment, the $12.50 will change to $19 for a flat fee. The third rate increase, if you pursue additional wastewater treatment improvements, would raise that flat charge to $23. So your immediate attention should be to respond to phase 1 of the water rates and phase 1 of the sewer rates. And I can work with you on finalizing additional increases based on what the engineer comes up with. Now, the good news is that you did post depreciation in here, so you're going to have some extra money, and you're going to need it because as you progress with the capital improvements, the engineer may or may not carry your project. He may want to get paid as you go along, as he submits information. So if that's the case, you've got no money to pay him. Typically, the engineering, preliminary engineering report and environmental report can range from $20,000 to 35,000, maybe as much as 50, depending on the amount of work and the size of the project. So this depreciation that you're setting aside, you may be able to use it to negotiate that engineering contract and start making payments on that. All that engineering cost will be reimbursed by USDA. The only problem is the engineer may not want to wait until you bid the project to get reimbursed. He's going to say, that's your problem, you pay me and you get reimbursed. It depends how you negotiate that with your engineer. So be aware of that. Probably the most costly part of the engineering is when he starts preparing the construction plans. But you've got time to build up a little bit of reserve by the time he gets to that stage. The first thing is he's going to have to submit is a preliminary engineering report and the environmental engineering report. So, if you want, I can try to provide assistance as needed. I can't come every week, but I can come once a month and meet with the staff and your engineer and try to help out as best as I can with the planning of the project. If the other thing is, right now, the interest rate is real low with USDA. You need to move as quickly as possible so that you can lock in that low interest rate. If this thing drags for 2 or 3 more years, instead of it being 2.5 or 3%, may jump back up to 4.5%, and every little bit helps. Any questions?
Mr. Gonzalez, thank you for your candidacy with us. I have a couple of questions. You talk about an affordability ratio. Can you elaborate on what that is?
Yeah, the affordability ratio is calculated as a percentage of the MHI. And let's see.
What, the MHI?
The medium household income for this, if you look on W4, the median household income for the city of Floresville, based on the 2000 census, is $30,093. Right now, the cost for 5,000 gallons, the threshold is 5,000 gallons. That's how you measure affordability. Right now, it costs $16.50 to buy 5,000 gallons of water from the city. It costs $198 a year, 0.66% of the MHI. So that's very low. I mean, I have some communities that actually have already exceeded the MHI affordability.
Are these proposed rates still within that 1.5 to 2% of?
Yes, if you look at W4, I gave you a comparison of the current rate and the proposed rate. For example, phase 1, right now, the ratio is 0.66. With the rate increase, it would be 0.86, still a little below the 2% affordability. And keep in mind that the commercial rates will be different from the residential rates. So they'll be a little higher. Reason being is the commercial, based on the usage information they gave me, the average commercial user uses twice as much water as a residential. So really, in my view, there's 2 ways to approach that. One is based on demand. If the demand is twice as much as a residential, to me, that should be reflected in the minimum charge. And so if the residential customer is paying $10 minimum, the commercial customer should be paying $20. Another standard for setting the appropriate commercial rate is to use meter equivalents based on the meters, but I didn't get information. And I didn't request information on meter size. I think you're going to change from commercial rate to meter equivalents is very unpopular.
Thank you. Another question I have is you talked about that you couldn't duplicate the what you called a increasing block rate. Any idea why that was, you couldn't duplicate it, or is this a problem on our side, or was it a calculation problem?
Well, no, based on the information I was given, the usage, when I apply that usage, for example, you have increments of 0 to 3,000. You have X amount of customers that fall in that category. When I convert that to dollars, it wouldn't add up to what you're projecting in revenues. So it could be that the billing program is not